The silent chains of Lindisfarne in the year 793, the holy island of Lindisfarne trembled under the keel of dragon-prowed longships. The monks of the scriptorium, their fingers still stained with illumined gold, looked up from vellum pages to see axes glinting in the salt wind. Alcuin of York would later write that the heathen had come like stinging hornets, but his letters, preserved in dusty Carolingian archives, never spoke of what happened that the horns fell silent. Sister Eadgifu was 23, a novice who had taken her vows beneath the shadow of St. Cuthbert's shrine. She had come from a Northumbrian thence hall, trading silk gowns for coarse wool, believing the cloister's walls were proof against the world. When the first Viking crashed through the chapel doors, she clutched the silver chalice she had been polishing. The raider, a giant named Bjorn One-Eye, laughed at the terror in her gray eyes. He did not kill her. Killing was wasteful. They herded the sisters, 37 in all, into the chapter house. The air reeked of spilled incense and fresh blood. The Vikings moved with practiced efficiency. Iron shackles, forged in Dublin's smithies, snapped around slender wrists. A runic tally stick was produced, 28 young, 9 past childbearing. Prices already carved in the trader's mind. 20 pieces of hacked silver for Eadgifu fair hair, unbroken spirit, hips wide enough for breeding. The abbess, Mother Ethelflaed, 60 winters old and bent like an ancient ewe, was dragged forward first. She spat in Bjorn's face and called down the wrath of God in flawless Latin. Bjorn backhanded her so hard that teeth scattered across the flagstones like hail. Then he declared, before his laughing crew, the words of Cona Anna, "This one is mine by right of conquest." The Grágás would later codify it, but the law was already ancient. A nun's vows dissolved the moment steel touched her throat. They sailed at dawn. Lindisfarne's smoke rose black against a pewter sky. Below deck, the women were chained in the bilge, knees drawn to chests in the stinking dark. Salt water sloshed over their habits. Some prayed aloud until voices cracked. Others stared into nothing, already learning the first lesson of captivity. Sound draws attention. Attention draws pain. Dublin's Quay swallowed them 3 weeks later. The slave market was a warren of warehouses roofed in whalebone and sod. Arabic merchants from Volga Bulgar haggled beside Frisian traders. A nun's pale-skinned fetched triple the price of a Saxon thrall girl. Eadgifu's golden hair was unbound and combed by rough fingers, while buyers pinched her arms and thighs like livestock. She bit one man's hand to the bone. He struck her unconscious with a casual fist. When she woke, her price had dropped to 15 pieces damaged goods. But sale was not the worst fate. Some sisters never reached the block. In the holding pens behind the market, Mother Ethelflaed was separated. Too old to breed, too proud to break, the Vikings had a ritual for such women. They called it Blodkona blood offering. That night, beneath a moon the color of spoiled milk, they dragged her to the tide line. Henbane and hemlock were forced between her swollen lips. As the drugs took hold, she saw visions of paradise, golden halls, Cuthbert's smiling face. Then the garrote tightened, her body convulsed once, twice. They laid her on Bjorn's funeral pyre when fever finally claimed him months later. The Sagas would say he entered Valhalla with a holy woman at his feet. They never mentioned her name. Eadgifu was sold to a Norwegian jarl named Sigurd Ravenfeeder. His long house perched on the cliffs of Vestfold like a brooding gull. There were already 6 thralls there, 3 Irish, 2 Frankish, 1 Pictish girl who had forgotten her own tongue. Sigurd's wife, Astrid, watched with winter eyes as the new Cona Anna was stripped and scrubbed raw in ice water. Astrid had once been a captive herself, taken from a Hebridean convent. Now she enforced the rules with a willow switch. The first night, Sigurd claimed his rights. He was not cruel for cruelty's sake. He prided himself on restraint. He broke no bones, drew no blood. But restraint is its own violation when consent has been erased by law. Eadgifu lay afterward staring at the smoke hole, counting stars until dawn. In the morning, she tried to hang herself from the rafters with her own girdle. Astrid cut her down and beat her until she pissed blood. Suicide was theft. The Grágás demanded 40 marks compensation. Sigurd paid it gladly. Eadgifu was worth more alive. Seasons turned. Her belly swelled with Sigurd's child. The other thralls taught her Norse words for survival. Mjölk for milk. Hlif for mercy, a word rarely used. When the boy was born red-faced, screaming, with his father's storm-gray eyes, Sigurd named him Thorvald and declared him freeborn. The child was taken to Astrid's cradle. Eadgifu saw him only when she nursed him under guard. At 6 months, he was weaned and sent to a wet nurse in the village. She never held him again. Years bled into each other. 3 more children followed, the girls sold at weaning. 1 boy kept as a playmate for Thorvald. Eadgifu learned to move silently, to anticipate blows, to smile when Sigurd was drunk. She learned the runes well enough to carve prayers on bone scraps and bury them beneath the threshold. She learned that resistance could be patient. In the winter of 806, Irish raiders Eyemere descendants seeking vengeance burned half of Vestfold. Sigurd's long house stood untouched, but chaos rippled outward. Astrid, heavy with her own child, grew careless. One night, while Sigurd snored sodden with mead, Eadgifu stole the iron key from Astrid's belt. She freed the other thralls, first 7 women moving like shadows through the snow. They reached the fjord where a stolen Nor waited. Eadgifu had paid a Frankish merchant in stolen silver to leave it provisioned. As they pushed off into Blackwater, torches flared on the cliff. Sigurd's voice roared across the ice, promising slow death. Arrows hissed into the hull. The Pictish girl took one through the throat and died gargling, but the wind caught their sail, and the dragon ships were frozen in harbor. They sailed west for weeks, eating seal blubber and hope. Storms scattered them. Eadgifu washed ashore alone on the Orkney Isles, half dead, speaking in tongues. Fishermen found her raving of chains and children sold like calves. They carried her to the abbey at Kirkwall, newly built by Jarl Sigurd the stout, irony sharp as any blade. The abbess there was a woman named Ragnhild, once a captive herself, freed when her Jarl choked on a fishbone. She recognized the look in Eadgifu's eyes, the 1,000-yard stare of the Kona Anna. For months, Eadgifu did not speak. She scrubbed floors until her hands bled, copied psalters until her fingers cramped. At night she woke screaming, feeling phantom chains. Then came the dreams, not the gentle visions of henbane, but fire. She saw Dublin's where houses burning, Vestfold's long houses in flames, her children running free. Ragnhild listened without judgment. The Lord turns swords to plowshares, she said, but sometimes he hands the sword back. In 810, Eadgifu, now called Sister Eadgifu, healed in memory of a lost friend, left Orkney with 12 companions. They were not nuns anymore, not truly. They wore habits over mail shirts, carried seekses beneath rosaries. Their first target was a slave caravan bound for Hadibi. 23 nuns chained in a wagon train, destined for Baghdad's markets. Gunnhild's women struck at dusk, silent as owls. Throats cut, locks picked, horses scattered. The guards died wondering how ghosts could wield steel. Word spread in whispers. The Vita Christer White Christ's vengeance walked the trade routes. From Scilly to Schleswig, slavers found their pens emptied, their guards castrated and crucified with iron nails through palms. Gunnhild kept a tally stick of her own, carving a cross for every soul freed. By 815, It held 312 marks. She never found her children. Torvald had grown into a warrior, raiding Frankish coasts with his father's raven banner. The girls sold east vanished into harems where fair skin was currency. Some nights, Gunnhild dreamed of their faces superimposed on the moon. She woke tasting blood where she had bitten her tongue to silence screams. In 819, she returned to Dublin. The city had grown fat on suffering. Wood quays where houses now stretched half a mile, roofed in red tile stolen from Roman ruins. Gunnhild's band now 30 strong. Hardened women with dead eyes slipped in during Samhain when the veil between worlds thinned and Norsemen drank themselves blind. They started fires in 4 places, oil-soaked rags, Greek fire stolen from Byzantine traders. As flames leapt, Gunnhild walked the pens with a torch in one hand, keys in the other. She freed hundreds. Some fell to their knees weeping. Others grabbed weapons and joined the slaughter. By dawn, Dublin's slave market was ash. The death toll, 147 slavers, 12 overseers, 1 jarl who begged in broken Gaelic before Gunnhild opened his belly and watched his entrails steam in the cold air. She spared the children, always the children. Irish kings offered bounties. Norse jarls swore blood oaths. Gunnhild became a ghost story told to frighten thralls into obedience. Behave, or the White Christ will come with her iron rosary. In 826, betrayed by a Frankish priest who feared papal wrath, she was cornered in a ruined abbey near the Seine. 30 Viking berserkers against 12 women who had nothing left to lose. They fought from chapel to crypt, habit sleeves soaked crimson. Gunnhild took 9 men with her before a spear caught her beneath the ribs. As she lay dying on cold stone, the abbess's cross pressed to her lips. She looked up at stained glass saints and smiled. No chains, no tally sticks, no more children sold by weight. They burned her body on a pyre of Viking shields. Her companions scattered her ashes into the sea, from Dublin to Orkney to Lindisfarne's reborn tides. Some say on certain nights, when fog rolls thick across the North Sea, you can hear iron chains dragging across the waves, then suddenly falling silent. The Sagas never recorded her name. The chronicles called her a demon. But in hidden corners of monastic libraries, in margins of prayer books written by trembling hands, you can still find scratched Latin, Gunnhild Libernus, Gunnhild, free us. The trade continued for centuries. The infrastructure perfected ventilated holds, modular pens, pricing schedules refined like wine. But something changed. Slavers began nailing crosses above warehouse doors, not for piety, but for protection. They whispered of a woman who walked through fire untouched, who freed the condemned and damned the free. In the end, the Vikings conquered half the world. But one nun, with nothing but stolen keys and righteous fury, conquered fear itself. And somewhere, beneath Dublin's modern streets, archaeologists still find tiny iron shackles sized for children's ankles. They catalog them, puzzled, and move on. The chains remember, the echoes of forgotten chains. Centuries after Gunnhild's ashes scattered into the North Sea, the chains did not break, they evolved. In the smoky halls of medieval York, beneath the shadow of the great minster, the breeding cells of Jorvik lingered like a curse. By 1072, Norman conquerors had claimed them, repainting pagan runes with Christian crosses. Sister Mildryth, a Saxon nun dragged from Whitby's cliffs after Hastings, woke each dawn to the clang of iron doors. She was 30, once vowed to chastity, now catalogued in the Doomsday Book as one female dependent, valued at 10 shillings. The Normans refined Viking efficiency. No more chaotic raids. This was administration. William's Knight received charters granting all chattels upon the land, nuns listed beside oxen. Mildryth birthed 5 children, in those stone cells bastards baptized in haste, then vanished into abbey foundling wheels. The church profited, tithes from sanctuary services, ledgers inked in gall. When she grew barren at 40, they poisoned her slowly with mercury-laced wine, calling it hysteria treatment. Her ravings tales of dragon ships and white-robed avengers were dismissed as madness. She died screaming Gunnhild's name, a ghost from a saga no one remembered, yet resistance simmered. In 1123, a girl named Astrid descended from Icelandic thralls, bearing 60% Celtic blood in her veins, escaped a Dublin holding pen. She had heard whispers of the Vita Christa from crones in the warehouses. Armed with a stolen dagger and unquenchable hate, Astrid rallied broken women across the Irish Sea. They struck Norman convoys, freeing hundreds, burning tax records that priced souls like grain. The trade adapted again. By 1200, Venetian merchants joined the routes, shipping exotic Frankish virgins to Constantinople. But the nuns fought back in subtler ways, poisoned wells, sabotaged ships, rosaries woven with garrote wire. Genetic echoes persist. Modern Scandinavians carry the DNA of 1,000 stolen brides. In 1348, the Black Death sighed through Europe, but slave markets thrived on desperation. Convents emptied as families sold daughters to survive. A Portuguese nun, Inês, taken from Lisbon's ruins, endured the eastern caravans to Baghdad. There, in harems of silk and sorrow, she taught captured sisters Arabic verses of rebellion. They rose in 1362, slitting throats under a blood moon, fleeing into the desert where Berber tribes sheltered them. The age of exploration carried the horror westward. Spanish conquistadors, schooled in Reconquista brutality, raided indigenous convents in the Americas, blending Viking law with papal bulls. But indigenous women, fused with escaped nuns' bloodlines, birthed warriors who torched missions from Mexico to Peru. Even in 1789, as French revolutionaries stormed the Bastille, they uncovered church ledgers listing nuns as breeding stock for noble lines. The guillotine claimed overseers, but the system shape shifted into colonial plantations. Today, beneath Dublin's glass offices, archaeologists unearth those child-sized shackles. In Norway's fjords, tourists marvel at saga museums, oblivious to the Celtic mitochondrial ghosts in their own blood. Human trafficking persists. Modern dragon ships are container vessels, warehouses in Libya, prices in cryptocurrency. But on fog-shrouded nights, fishermen swear they hear chains dragging, then silence. And in hidden convents worldwide, women whisper prayers to get healed. Mildryth, in saints unsanctioned, avengers eternal, the chains remember, so must we.